Good afternoon to all the participants. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's workshop on thesis writing in the social sciences. Hope it will be a very insightful, very engaging session. And good afternoon to you, Dr. Gabriel, our facilitator for today's session. Can I just confirm if I am audible enough, if everybody can hear me before I can proceed? With a thumbs up, please kindly indicate with a thumbs up if you can all hear me. Okay, perfect. Thank you again for joining us for today's workshop. My name is Lawrence, and I will be your moderator for today's workshop on thesis writing in the social sciences. As we all know that, writing a thesis is the most challenging, but also the most rewarding journey of postgraduate students. And then we all on kindly different phases of our thesis writing. But once you are done and once you submit that thesis, it always comes with rewards. So today I think we're going to be exploring how to write a thesis in the social sciences discipline. So Dr. Gabriel is our facilitator for today's session. So before I can introduce Dr. Gabriel, I just would like to thank all the participants for joining us for today's session, and also just to read up on some few housekeeping rules that we have before we can begin the session. I just wanted to let everybody know that if you do have any question during the session, please kindly raise your hand. And if you do not wish to speak, you can also type your question in the chat box and I will address them to our facilitator. And also, please kindly note that I will be posting a feedback survey in the chat session. So please kindly fill it in as we use it for multiple things. We use it for our reporting purposes. We also share it to our facilitator for their reporting, as well as to generate your certificate of attendance using this feedback survey. So we kindly ask you to fill it in with the correct details, your names, your surnames, your emails, as well as your student number, so that when we generate the certificate of attendance, we generate it with the correct details. And as I've stated in the beginning, that this workshop is being recorded, and the presentation slide together with this workshop recording will be shared on our model communities. And if you are not enrolled on our model communities, you can email us at rcdinquiries@uj.ac.za. I will also be posting our email in the chat box in case you want to email us regarding the resources for this particular workshop. So please kindly allow me to introduce our facilitator, Dr. Gabriel Maniera, by reading his bio that you're hearing. Dr. Gabriel Maniera holds a PhD in Economic and Management Sciences with international trade from the Northwest University and is currently enrolled in the postgraduate diploma in research supervision at the University of Johannesburg. With over a decade of teaching experience and a strong publication record, he has authored and co-authored book chapters and a number of articles in top-tier accredited peer-reviewed journals. He actively reviews for reputable journals and has received multiple awards for academic excellency. Dr. Moniera completed his postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Johannesburg and currently serves as the research capacity development specialist here at the postgraduate school, University of Johannesburg, supporting postgraduate students and researchers in academic writing and publication. His research interests include trade policy, export promotion, globalization, foreign direct investment, regional integration in Africa, market accessibility, measurements, and 4IR trade-related research. So you can just hear from such a rich bio of Dr. Gabriel Manero, who else but, to give such an insightful presentation on such an important topic, on how to actually craft our own thesis within the social sciences discipline. So without any further ado, without wasting any more of your time, please kindly allow me to hand over to our facilitator for today's session, Dr. Gabriel Munera. Thank you so much.
Lawrence, thank you so much for the warm introduction. And I just want, before I begin with the presentation for the participants, as well as yourself, to just indicate by show of virtual thumb if you can hear me well, and if you can also see this screen that I'm going to share with you now. So just kindly let me know if you can see the screen, and if you can also hear me well. I've seen some indication from the participants. But I think I'm audible, and also my slides that I've shared with you, you are able to see them. And thank you so much for that. Thank you, Lawrence, once again for the introduction. So today I will be facilitating the session, on thesis writing in the social sciences. I think during the course of this week, for those who have joined us, we have shared a lot, in terms of elements that sort of feeds into the war writing process, especially from the using the lens of the social sciences. So it has been I actually think from last week, we have had quite a number of sessions where we have discussed the aspects of writing as relating to the social science field. So this is the outline of the presentation. I will just introduce, giving a little bit of some definitions. And today I've also included even the definition of what is social science. Some of us, we are within the field of social science, but we don't really understand what does it mean when we say a social scientist. So we'll talk about that. How does it differ from a natural scientist? So I've just thought that I also, it's important for us to have a conversation that is centered on really defining ourselves. Who are we as social scientists? Then we can move to the steps in the thesis writing journey, the thesis structure, although this is contextualized to the social sciences field, offer some writing tips, common challenges, strategies for success in thesis writing, then the final checks that you do before submission. Then I will now offer my concluding remarks before handing over back to Mr. Asani to usher us into the open discussion segment. But if you do have any question that you want to ask during the course of the presentation, please raise your virtual hand. I'll stop and address the question. Alternatively, you can type your question in the chat box, or we can also engage during the open discussion segment, where you can share also your experiences, your contributions, including asking the questions that would be having as relating to the conversation that we are going to have here. So these are just some definitions. So I'm going to define first, to start with, what does it mean when we talk about a thesis, and the use of the word thesis, dissertation. It actually, in some other geographical location, it's used interchangeably to the way that we apply it here in South Africa, right? So let me just say, in South Africa, and also in many parts of Southern Africa, we refer to thesis. We refer to it as a study that is undertaken by doctoral candidates or by doctoral students, where the dissertation relates to the masters. Then also mini dissertation relates to the masters by coursework. But the two, when you go to other, sort of, let's say maybe Western countries, in the Western, maybe in Western countries like Western Europe, if you go, to such countries, the way that they apply these now, it sort of differ from the way that we apply it. The thesis now refers to the master's level, and dissertation refers to the PhD PhD level. But regardless of that, I just wanted to mention this, that sometimes these are used interchangeably and referring to masters, where thesis will be referring to masters and dissertation to PhD in other locations. But here within South Africa and the vast of Southern Africa, we just use thesis for PhD studies and dissertation for um, for master studies. So what does it mean when we say, when we talk about a thesis? So when we talk about a thesis, we are simply referring to a comprehensive and systematic research project that is undertaken at postgraduate level, designed to demonstrate a student's advanced understanding of their discipline. So you must have an advanced understanding. So this also goes with some other prescriptions and conditions and expectations that are set out in the National Qualifications Framework for the South African Qualifications Authority. So that is other policy documents and guidelines that also further define, ingrained into this definition of thesis in South African context, in terms of the requirements for you to be called a doctoral candidate, or for you to be the one that would have, you would have written a thesis, then you become a doctoral student. What does that mean? So this is itself, this, it just, when you are writing a thesis, you go beyond the simple presentation of facts or summaries of existing studies, but you have to contribute original insights, interpretations, or empirical evidence to the field. So that case where you have to also, provide the significance of your study or the contribution that they have made within the field for you to be labeled as a doctoral, a holder of a doctoral degree. So that is very important, and also depending on the level of study, a thesis, it may take, like what I've already said, the form of a master's dissertation or a doctoral thesis, right? So that's why. But within our context in South Africa, then the thesis is for doctoral. For masters, then we refer to it as a dissertation. So there is also some other connotations in which this term can be used. But either way, it will represent a sustained scholarly effort that adheres to academic standards and conventions of the university itself, agreed conventions globally, including also those other guidelines that I've been talking about, the South African Qualifications Authority, the NQF, National Qualification Framework, where we see that for a dissertation, it will be on NQF 9, then for a thesis, you're now at NQF 10, that kind of. So there are certain conditions and expectations in terms of your thinking, critical thinking, the application of your thoughts, as well within the study that you'll be doing, So at a doctoral level, that is should be at a higher level than when you are doing masters or when you are doing an honors or an honors study. So a thesis itself, it should demonstrate a master of skills. It should also demonstrate critical engagement with literature, the ability to present an argument based on evidence, and the we it can also be viewed as both a process and a product, right? So we must also understand that it is a process and it is also a product. And as a process, we are saying, when you are writing a thesis, that involves a journey of intellectual growth, skill development, and academic training. Right. So, which is the process that includes identifying a research problem. We talk about that as we move on, conducting literature review, designing a methodology, collecting and analyzing data, drafting, revising. Remember, it's a process. You write and rewrite and rewrite. Defending the work. So in other ways, it actually develops you as the researcher, you develop critical thinking, resilience, project management, and other, qualities or traits that points to independence, right? Which is a very important aspect, especially when you are at doctoral level, independence and discipline. And as a product, now we are looking at it as that final thesis, that is the tangible output, the one that is deposited in the repository of the library. After you have been the degree has been conferred to you, or you have finally submitted. It has been assessed. You have done well. Then it has been finally the degrees to be conferred upon you. Then you can be able to submit. So that final output, that's the product that we are talking about now, which is that written document, that you would have written, resembling your as a researcher yourself, the contribution that you have made to new to knowledge, or to the field, or to existing publications. So in other words, that now the product is the one that is now serving as evidence of academic competence, and often a foundation for other future scholarly work, publications, or professional practice. So we see now that, like I've said, it's also important for us to understand what social science means. And while it might be seem like possibly something that everyone is aware of, some do not really understand what social science means. Right. So I'm going to just define it, and also go through a bit of some characteristics. What When we are saying a social scientist, what does that mean? So social science itself, it is just a very broad group of academic disciplines that are concerned with the study of human behavior, societies, and cultures. So here we are talking about these are other, when we try to put other nodes, we are talking about psychology, economics, wherever you are dealing with human behavior, wherever you are dealing with societies, wherever you are dealing with cultures, then we are talking of of social sciences, including humanities itself. So in other words, if you are a social scientist, you are an individual. You are sort of a scientist that examine how individuals interact with one another, how groups and institutions functions, how social, political, and economic systems shape everyday life, right? So I've given already some examples. We have other: sociology, education, political science, psychology, anthropology, development studies, human geography, communication studies, economics, accounting. All that they form part of social sciences. And when you put these, the discipline itself, the aim is to generate insights that not only explain the social phenomena, but also inform policies, practices, and interventions that impact communities and nations, or countries. So the key characteristics is people focused, right? In the sense that it looks at human behavior, relationships, institutions, and cultures. It's contextual as well. It considers cultural, historical, and social background. Theory driven. In social science, what we do should be underpinned by theory. There must be some school of thought that we are following. We don't just our ideas do not just surface, but they are grounded on theory. There must be some theoretical explanation to those ideas that we will be having. And even when we conceptualize studies, they are guided by conceptual frameworks and also theoretical perspectives. Then methodologically, it's also methodologically diverse in that it uses both qualitative and quantitative approach, including mixed methods as well. So both of them, we qualitative, quantitative, a mixture of that. then you have a hybrid form of a methodology, which is the mixed method. Then ethically sensitive in protecting participant rights and avoiding harm, which is very, very central to social science research, So in always, the rights of the participants must be protected, must ensure confidentiality, obtain informed consent, avoid causing psychological, social, and physical harm. So those are very central ethical elements that are pinned or to or linked to social science research. So we can give some examples, like maybe when you study the effects of urban housing policy on migrant communities, so in a way one will be examining how possibly government decisions about housing allocations can impact the migrants, access to shelter, for example, and also integration into local communities, economic opportunities, and sense of belonging. So when we look at such kind of research, it combines policy analysis, it also maybe interviews with migrants, statistical data on housing access, so that you can be able to provide a holistic picture of that particular issue, So such that this is where now mixed method research design can come into play, where you can integrate both. So this is when we look at the steps that are followed in the thesis journey. So we will discuss this as we go, as we move on. But you begin by choosing a topic. So all this is a process of reading. Remember, you have to read for you to be able to establish where is it that is like what has been done, what has not been done. Which topic are you gonna choose? But obviously, where depending on your research interest, then that also guides this process of choosing a topic. But we'll talk more about it, where we look at what issue is worth investigating. So you have to look at that first. It's a process of reading, as I'm saying, and then you after that we move into the introduction, which sort of set the stage for the whole thesis. So it has quite a number of elements: background and context, problem statement, motivation, your research questions, research objectives, research method, contribution. Essentially, if you're a PhD candidate, then the outline of the study. So we'll talk about those elements as we continue. Then you have to conduct literature review, looking at what is already known, identifying the gap that you are going to occupy, with research. Remember, you must fill a gap in literature. If it has been done, then why are you doing it again? I always say that it emphasizes on that. If the research has already been done, there's no need for you to be wasting resources doing it again. Designing your research method, now looking at how will you answer your research questions, or how will you achieve the objectives or the aims of the study. Then you have to collect data, that's the gathering evidence, analyzing the data, now making sense of the evidence, then writing and revising, where you now craft a coherent and logical argument guided by the evidence that you also that you have already obtained. Then you that lead to the conclusion of the work. You submit and defend. You share your work, and you continually defend it. In the previous session that we had this morning, where we're talking about dissemination of your research, I think the facilitator mentioned that you still have to, even when you are now disseminating your work, you still have to defend it, because it's your work. You still have to defend it. If there's something that falls short and someone points it out, then you still have to to defend that. So this is something that will be with you for the rest of your life. Once it's published, it's part of now the literature, then it's in the scholarly repositories and indexed in other platforms, then that will become something very, very important, and that will be with you for the rest of your life. So that is where it even become very essential. I had a student who is doing PhD who came to me talking about maybe possibly trying to look into ways in which the student can be able to sort of withdraw um, a dissertation that has been already deposited in the repository, but with a name that was not spelled correctly. So once it's out, now it's on Google and other platforms. It's a difficult process for you to be able to change that, because platforms like Google, if it's now in the repository of the library, they just take it from there. So of course at the library you can go and have it corrected and removed and another one put, but on those platforms it might continue to appear, that old one might continue to appear. So you have to go on every platform where your output is appearing for you to be able to do that. So which is, it's actually very important that when you are doing, within this process of crafting your thesis, then it's a process that you must do diligently and without making mistakes, especially with your name and surnames and the introductory part, making grammatical errors and other language code, violations, that do not conform to the generally agreed writing conventions. Right. Let's now move into those steps that I've been talking about. So I'll talk about choosing a topic first. So it's important that you select the right research topic. That is one of the most crucial steps in any academic journey. Any academic journey that you can take, it's important that you choose the right topic. Your topic, it will shape the direction of the study itself, determine the type of the data that you collect, and also influence how motivated and committed you remain throughout the research process. So that is very, very, very important. If you choose a wrong topic or something that you do not feel good about, then even yourself, it's not going to be a pleasant process when you are now undertaking the study. So it's important that you choose a topic that align with your personal interest. Remember, you will spend months, if not years, engaging with your topic. Okay, some can go. Remember, for PhD, you can go up to 5 years, right? You can go up to 5 years doing PhD if you are doing it part time, but you can go up to a maximum of 3 years if you are doing it full time, right? So such, it's something that you're gonna do for a quite a long time. So you must be. It will torment you if you do not. If you it doesn't align with your personal interest. It must be something that genuinely sparks your curiosity. That if you do it in that, approach it in that manner, then that will ensure that you remain motivated even through other phases, difficult phases. We'll talk about that as well. So it's important that you ask yourself that, would I still be interested in this topic even if it gets challenging? So such questions, you have to, they are necessary to be asked. You must be passionate about what you are doing, right? It's important to also ensure academic relevance and contribution. Very important, right? Which is, if you choose a strong research topic, then it will go beyond personal curiosity. In other words, I'm saying it must address a question that is significant within the discipline, not because you think that it's a question yourself, right? Not because you think that it's a problem. You must be able to convince the reader or the intended audience that this is a problem that exists and that warrant that there must be research to address that problem, or to as a solution to the problem. So it's very, very important. So that part of convincing, that's where now it's a process that is evidence, um, that is evidence based. So the aim is to add new knowledge, perspectives, or evidence to existing debates. So that involves filling a gap in the literature, testing or refining existing theories, applying established frameworks to new contexts, as well as also generating frameworks as well. I've seen a lot of a number of students, PhD students that I've assisted in the past in terms of writing consultations and so on, who at the end, their contribution is developing a framework. So sort of guidelines in which maybe a particular policy can be executed, or a particular action can be executed. So I've seen that kind of a contribution. You can also develop new theories yourself. There's this theory, there's theory X, there's theory Y. I have a better theory Z. Then you bring your theory. Those are kind of contributions that are meaningful when you are a PhD candidate. Sometimes we listen when people are graduating, and we hear when their studies are being read. And because of knowledge and background of knowing these things, you just wonder whether is it really a PhD study or it's a master's study, right? But it shouldn't be a PhD just of a name. Shouldn't your thesis must demonstrate all these elements that I'm talking about. So that's just some food for thought. You can think about it. You are the one who know what you are writing, what your topic is about. Then you can also just use what I'm saying as a benchmark and measure it against what you are still working on. Right. So it's important to check feasibility as well in terms of time, budget, data availability. If you do not, you must ask yourself, do I have the time to complete the study within the deadlines of the program? Right, within the deadlines of the program. Like I said, for PhD, it's 60 months, if I'm not mistaken. It's about 60 months. So if you are doing part-time, then you have to ask yourself, can I finish within that 60 months? Are there costs that are involved? Travel, equipment, software, participant incentives, and whether those costs are they manageable? So I think some of these aspects they are also asked even when you do the proposal, whether you have to put some kind of expected budget, where you have to if the study costs 2 million, where's the 2 million going to come from? Do you have the 2 million? So you have to look at the feasibility of that study. Can that be done? Then the issue of data, very important. You can write, put all that flesh, but if you don't have data to provide the evidence, the central, the core of a research is the data, whether the data is available. How are you going to analyze that? How are you going to answer the questions that they're asking? So that is a very, very, very important aspect. So you have to ask yourself that whether is there reliable data accessible for your research. If primary data collection is required, will you have access to participants, institutions, or organizations? And if you are using secondary data, are there databases and reports that are available that you can, sort of harvest the data from that you use for your research? So you must just, when this process, bear in mind that a topic might be interesting, but it's impossible to complete within your constraints, in terms of other limitations that are there. Then it's also important to consult your supervisor early. Remember, the supervisors, they play a vital role in shaping research topics. They are experts in the field, so you have to engage with them early. That will help to refine your broad ideas into workable questions, and also they can help as well in terms of identifying literature that you may have overlooked, avoiding some mistakes that are normally made, especially in the context of being over ambitious, in terms of scope. Right. Then remember your research as well. It must be aligned as well, with the ongoing research opportunities or institutional expertise within the university, which is UJ, where we are, enrolled at the moment. It's important to move from a broad to narrow, Like, because you remember, broad topics, they often seem appealing, but they can become overwhelming. So it's important that you narrow your focus to ensure that you focus on depth rather than superficiality. So what I'm saying is that instead of saying, like, maybe for example, youth unemployment in Africa, that is broad. If you have to investigate that, then you must be able to get the data for the whole of Africa, either secondary or primary. If it's primary, then you have to go and maybe possibly collect the data from every African country or a number of African countries for it to be to be generalizable. But you can narrow that to impact of vocational training programs on youth unemployment in Johannesburg. Then you're able to go in Joburg, maybe possibly, and even collect the data from the youth than if you say Africa. Even you can even narrow it down to maybe perceptions of vocational training graduates in Soweto on employability outcomes in the past 5 years. So you can now narrow it within Johannesburg. You have even narrowed it down. So that is very, very important. But also, it also depends on the scope of generalizations that you want to make. Don't narrow it down to Soweto. Then at the end, you say it represents the whole country, right? Then you have to test your topic with these key questions. Before you finalize it, you must ask whether is the topic interesting to yourself? Does it contribute to academic knowledge? Is it feasible within the time that you are having, budget and data constraints? Is it ethically sound and acceptable to the institution, which is UJ? And can it be framed into clear, researchable questions? Right. So that is a sort of I've outlined the criteria for selection: relevance to discipline and society, feasibility, sufficiency of data or data availability, originality. What gap are you filling? Then the sources of inspiration could be current debates, policy challenges, literature review gaps, supervisors' expertise. When you ask your supervisors, they can tell you if they know, topics that are hot at that time, or those are the ones that are trending. Then you can be able to also write on that. Then also even your professional or research interest as well. So those are sources of um of inspiration, and it's always important that make sure that you do not end up with topics that are overly broad, like the one that I was talking about, unemployment in Africa or education in Africa. Rather you can say maybe possibly the impact of digital learning tools on rural high school learners in Limpopo or in Northwest, or in a particular district within maybe Northwest or Gauteng. But it's important that you also put the generalizability of your study into perspective as well when you're doing that. So think about it. Then, so from after you have done that, you move to the introductory chapter, and within the introduction itself, it sets the stage for the entire thesis. So this is where you explain what the research is about, why it matters, and how it will be done. Right. So I've already mentioned certain elements. I'll just go through them again in passing. I won't go in detail on every aspect, but the core elements. Before we talk about the core elements, you must make sure that the introduction it's engaging, it's coherent and logically structured, because the introduction it's read together with the conclusion. Right. That's why you write it first. But that is the last chapter again that you will write after you've already concluded your study. You go back to the introduction to realign it with what you have said in the conclusion. If you don't do that, then you will have you set the stage, but at the end you end up on another stage at the end. So it's important that you have to align that, or you have to give logical explanations of why you ended up on another stage. Right? I always give an example of saying, in the introduction, you said I'm going to Cape Town. But in the conclusion, you are now in Limpopo. right? You have to explain. Otherwise, you just have to say, I'm going to Limpopo. Go back to the introduction and say I'm going to Limpopo, then talk about how we are going to reach Limpopo. Otherwise, you have to explain why have you now ended up in Limpopo. You know, so it's those are, like I'm saying, it's important that the introduction is engaging, coherent, and logically structured, right? Because it's read together with the conclusion, and that's what reviewers do. I'll read your summary of the study or your abstract, your title summary, then I'll go to the introduction, then go to the conclusion. Because if you're telling me what is it that you're going to do in the study, so when I go to the conclusion, I must see what you have done and measure it against what you said you're going to do. Right. So that's it is actually very important. And these are the core elements of the introduction: background to the study. So the background, that's where you are giving a broader context, historical and policy relevance. So I always take the historical and to try to go into the development of a particular phenomena, over time as it evolves over time. So the background of the study, it's very important, in giving a broader context, historical and policy relevance. Then we have the problem statement, where you are now looking at what gap or issue that is motivating the study. That has to be explicit. In at most, if it's too much, two paragraphs. But one paragraph is enough for you to state your problem, because we just want to hear what is the problem, right? And make sure that it is a problem. You convince the reader that this is a problem that warrants that research should be done to address it. Then research aim and objectives, what the study intends to achieve, research questions, and hypotheses if applicable, significance of the study, theoretical, practical, and policy contributions, scope and delimitation of the study, what the study covers and excludes, outline of the thesis structure, right? Where you look at the preview of chapters. Not just say chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. No, go in a little bit in detail. Just in a sentence, chapter 1 will, the chapter 1 looked at this. From chapter 2, this is where I'm going to review literature relating to the topic that they are doing, and that this will consist of. Then you include a little bit of some sections that you have included there, so that I know you are signposting. You are actually navigating the reader, so that the reader must know what is it that you have done, during the course of the study. So I already can give a bit of a judgment on the study that you are doing. So with that, when you are writing the background section, it's important that you place the research in context. Right? So that's for social scientists, we want the social, economic, political, or institutional background, key debates, trends, or other issues. So you have to put it in context, and you must avoid too much detail. So when too much detail, you leave it for the literature review section, because that is where you are still going to review literature. Literature review builds on some of the aspects that have already been saying within the background of the introduction section or the introductory chapter, right? So mostly that funnel approach, that's where it applies, where you start from broad, specific, then you focus. Okay, an upside down pyramid. Okay, you start broad, then you go to specific, then to the focus of the study, right? Then within the problem statement, there must be a clear articulation of the research problem. Like I've said, that at most 2 paragraphs. Don't have a page of problem statement or pages of problem statement. No, it must be very concise. They are very clear and concise. So you have to answer the question: what is wrong? Why does it matter? What gap exists? And avoid vague claims like little is not. You must be precise and evidence-based. Don't say this, the little is not. Like, for example, an example of a weak problem statement. There's little research on student dropouts. There's little research, you know. But if you are stating it properly, while dropout rates in South African universities are extensively studied at undergraduate level, little empirical work has examined the role of supervisor support in postgraduate student retention. So you have to don't be just it shouldn't be vague. Then you also have, this is where you have the research aims as well, objectives and question, where the aim, that one broad overarching statement. Then objectives are the measurable steps that for you to achieve that aim, then you end up having, these are the measurable steps that you are going to take. So your aim is linked right to the topic, and that is the broad one. Then the questions, you can derive them from objectives, right? Or you can derive the objectives from the questions, whichever you do first. So in a thesis, you normally include both, but when I write papers, I just, if I include questions, I don't put objectives, because logically you can be able to tell what the objectives are. So I don't state them again. If I use objectives, then, or if I state the aim of the study, then I don't have to state the questions. But within a thesis or a dissertation, then that is something that you must do. Then for hypothesis, that it's for quantitative studies, where now you're looking at predictions that you can test statistically. So this is where you look at the sort of what you think is the nature of the relationship, right? Then the significance of the study, where we have the theoretical significance, in which you fill a knowledge gap or extend theory. Then we have practical significance, where you improve practice, policy, or interventions. Then we have personal or disciplinary relevance, right, where you contribute to your field, university, or community. And so those are all forms of contribution. And some universities are strict that maybe for PhD, they just want a theoretical significance. You must contribute to theory. So which is also very important, because you want to do something that is also outstanding, that you will live in the field, that will earn you the title of being called a doctor, right? Then the scope or delimitations and limitations, then when you talk of scope, we are talking about the boundaries of the research, the topic, the setting, the participants, that is the geographical focus of the study. Then when you talk of delimitations, these are now the choices the researcher made. Like you are focusing on only one university, then why focusing on that one university? You have to provide the logic behind you focusing on one university. Then when we talk of limitations, now we look at factors beyond the researcher's control, like time, funding, and access maybe to participants and so on. So in other words, the generic thesis structure, I will also talk about it later as we move on, but I will just give a recap of that. So it's a when you now sort of provide an outline of the thesis structure, which is the last section of your introductory chapter. That's where now you're providing a roadmap of the chapter. When you say chapter 1, it's introduction, chapter 2, literature review, chapter 3, theoretical framework, chapter 4, methodology, chapter 5, findings, chapter 6, discussion, chapter 7, conclusion and recommendation. So these are just the sort of a generic structure that is normally followed. But like I said, myself, it's just an issue of preference. I don't prefer just listing them saying chapter 1 this, chapter 2 this, but I prefer writing about them a little bit. Of course, I can list them, but also providing a bit of sort of insights into what I'm going to be doing within that particular chapter. Then the literature review section, its purpose is to identify what is already existing or what has been studied and where the gaps are. So that is the main purpose, to identify existing research, to spot research gaps, and to avoid duplication of the of the start. You have to avoid duplication as well, and in a way you must build a theoretical framework, right? Where you are reviewing literature, your review of literature informs your conceptual foundation, guiding research questions, methodology, and the interpretation of the results that you will be doing. Remember, within the discussion section, you have to, or discussion chapter, you have to triangulate with the literature that you would have would have reviewed. So it's you also you have to contextualize your study in the sense that you must situate your research within the broader academic discourse, demonstrating awareness of current debates, trends, and controversies within the field. And in terms of duplication, remember, when you understand prior works, that will help you to avoid the repeating studies that have already been sort of focused on, and you have to sort of focus towards a contribution that is novel or that is unique, right? And research gaps is very important, because only through analyzing previous literature, that's where you can identify areas that have been underexplored or questions that remain unanswered. Right? So in a way, you are now ensuring that your research contributes to something new. It's novel, right? Um, there is an element of originality. So for literature review, you can use reliable databases. This is sort of an approach that you can take. You must use reliable databases, such as the access peer-reviewed sources via Google Scholar. Google Scholar, you can visit it through the UJ library as well, so that you can have access to those papers that are subscribed for. Then you can also, we have others like JSTOR, EBSCOhost, Scopus, Web of Science, and other discipline-specific databases. Including those ones on the Director of Open Access Journals also, that relates to the social science field, that you can access without having to pay for or subscribe to that particular journal. Then besides the use of reliable databases, you also have to organize your literature by themes or concepts. Right, so you have to ensure that you structure the review around key ideas, theoretical frameworks, or recurring patterns, rather than merely presenting studies chronologically. That you just say 1990 so and so did this, 1992, then you tell us, like, you give us the abstract of that person. That's not writing literature review. You have to critically evaluate the sources. So you must apply your mind as well. You have to be critical when you are reviewing literature. In other words, you must go beyond summarizing. Okay, you have to assess the methodology within those papers. You have to, within those sources, you have to assess the quality, the relevance, the limitations, and the contribution that the studies are also making to your research. Right? That must be viewed in the context of the research that you are doing. What does that mean for the research that you are doing yourself or for your study? Then you also have to synthesize over descriptions. In other words, you identify relationships, contradictions, and trends among studies to create a cohesive narrative that supports your research questions. So that whole exercise of reading, maybe noting what was the aim of the study, what method was used, what were the conclusions, what was the contribution of the study, it will just collapse to maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs if you synthesize it. Right? You don't have to describe, but you have to synthesize. There's a strand of literature that maybe that the way consensus is shared, that there's a relationship between maybe these two elements. Then you can maybe look at another strand. There's another strand that was contained that. Then you put the strand that contained. That kind of, when you read some of the sort of top papers within your field, right? Within economic, within the social science field, but specifically maybe in terms of the research interest that your research interest yourself, then you can see that that the way that literature is written, it's not sort of in a descriptive manner, but rather it's synthesized, right? Then, so these are just some tips maybe for effectiveness when you're writing literature review. You just have to maintain what we call an annotated bibliograph, where you record summaries, critiques, and relevance of each source as you read them. So that will save time during the writing and ensure that you also reference properly. And you must stay focused. You have to include only sources directly relevant to your research questions and objectives. So don't just because any source, then you just end up and you are reading even sources, some sources maybe possibly that do not even speak to what you're doing. So you must be able to evaluate and choose sources that without wasting time, that speaks to what you are looking for, right? Then you must also update continuously. The literature review, it's a process that is iterative in the sense that it's a repetitive process. So you keep adding new ideas and perspectives as your research progresses. I've seen people who say, well, you were talking about COVID when it was happening, but now COVID is not there anymore. So you must update and ensure what is it that what is the literature saying today. So you have to continuously update. If you take 5 years doing the start, what you said in the first year, you have to update that because your study by the time you submit it must be current and relevant. Then you also have to maybe use of reference management tools as well. Important, very important, like EndNote, for example, that the university offers. Then we have others like Mental as well, that you can also make use of. So that will actually help you to organize citations and also to streamline referencing as well. Otherwise, you can do it follow the traditional manner that I usually also follow. But these tools they do help. Then so in a way, if your literature review is strong, right, that will in a way demonstrate your scholarly understanding. You must be able to demonstrate that you know what is going on in the field. You must be able to justify your research questions and to situate your study as a meaningful contribution to the field. Right. Then you go on from literature review. That's where now you look at the research design. That's the methodology chapter where we have the main approaches that you can follow. We have the quantitative analysis. Where you can use descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, visualizations. So when we talk of descriptive statistics, these are simply summaries that are describing your data using measures such as means, medians, frequencies, percentages, and standard deviations. Then when you talk of inferential, that's where now you are examining the relationships now, where you do those regression analysis, t-test, analysis of variance or hypothesis testing, correlations, the visualizations, use of charts, graphs, tables, that you can use to present your data clearly and highlight key findings. Right. Then we have on the qualitative analysis, that's where you follow the thematic analysis, you follow narrative analysis. There's also content analysis. Where the thematic, you identify recurring patterns, themes, and categories within the textual or visual data to interpret the meaning, right? Then on narrative, we are exploring individual stories, experiences, and the perspectives to understand how the participants make sense of events. Then in content analysis, I've used content analysis before, where you systematically code and quantify textual data to detect trends or patterns. So this you can go online, look at policy documents and the likes, and you extract text that you mine text from that. Then from there you can now do coding. You can do coding to come up with links and so on. So you in a way you code those that text to end up with means that you can use to detect trends and or patterns. It's very important that you, when you are, working on your data analysis, that your method, it must match your research question. It's very, very important. So you have to ensure that all the analysis, it directly address your research questions and objectives. So that's why I say at the end, you must go back again to the introduction. If you did not, if you listed an objective, but then you ended up not achieving that objective, then you rather remove it from the start, because you did not do anything to achieve the objective. You did not do anything to answer that particular question. Then it's also important to integrate literature as well. You have to compare and contrast findings with existing studies to highlight the contributions and contextual relevance. And the issue of transparency as well, where you will have to clearly describe the analytical methods and the rationale, for applying that, so that you ensure that there is replicability and credibility of the research that you would have done, or of the method that you would have followed. All right. So in terms of the method, it's important. I'll repeat that again, that the method, it must fit the research questions. It must be able to answer the research questions. Right. Then the data collection, we have different sources, issues of ethics, um, you know, and so you, in terms of sources, we have primary data, we have secondary data, where the primary data, we are looking at that information that you collect directly from participants or observations for the purpose of your study. And the common methods that can be used are interviews, you know, so where you can use structured, semi-structured, or unstructured interviews to gather detailed personal insights. You have focus groups, which are interactive discussions with a group of participants to explore perceptions and experiences. We also have observations. So I've presented on these before. So if you need resources that talks about these, data collection tools, then you can reach to us, or just go, if you're enrolled on Amudu communities, then you're able to access that. But I've presented on that, including surveys or questionnaires that you can use to collect quantitative or qualitative information from a larger sample efficiently. So all that we have, I think I've done the quantitative data collection tool. I've also done qualitative data collection tools as well. Then if it's secondary data, then this, we are now referring to data collected by others that you analyze to answer your research questions. Right. So that includes government statistics, existing data sets, archives and documents, where you look at historical records, policy documents, media reports, organizational reports. When we talk of government statistics, that's census data, health statistics, education, unemployment data, and other types of data that you can access through usually the agent for the government is state SA, you know. Then you can go other sites, World Bank, World Development Indicators, World Governance Indicators, the VITS, World Integrated Trading Solutions. That's where I access trade-related data a lot, right? Comtrade, UN Comtrade for trade-related related data. Then, so you must know those databases, in terms of the research that you'll be doing yourself. Then we have the issue of ethical consideration, where mostly issues of informed consent, ensuring participants that they understand the study purpose, procedures, risks, and so on, confidentiality and anonymity, cultural sensitivity, data security, transparency, So all those are very important steps that one have to follow in when you are collecting data. And it's important that if you want to effectively collect the data, then you have to pilot test the instrument. So you have to test surveys or interview guides on a small sample to ensure that there's clarity and relevance. Right? So you have to also test your survey, your tools that you are going to use to collect the data. right? Then also keeping detailed field notes as well. So you have to document observations, reflections, and context to support data interpretation. So you use those notes when you are now interpreting your data as well. Then organize your timeline, plan data collection stages carefully to stay on schedule and allow time for ethical approvals as well. So don't go and collect data without approval, ethical approvals. And I'm sure that by now you all have ethical approvals of the study that they are doing. Then now that's why we're now talking about the writing phase. How do you write the thesis? How do you structure the thesis? Then monitoring quality as well. You have to regularly check the data for completeness, accuracy, and consistency. So if there's missing data, then you have to make sure that you have ways so possibly of addressing that, or you're using methods that can work with the missing values as well. Then so if you in a way if you effectively collect the data, that will ensure that your the study that you're doing, it's valid, the reliability of the research as well, including its credibility as well. So it's important that all that should also be done while they are upholding the ethical standards and protecting participants' rights. Right. Then so for quantitative data analysis, so I've talked about that. We've talked about the, so in terms of the descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, and data visualizations. Then qualitative analysis, we will do it in form of thematic analysis. Then we have the narrative analysis and content analysis. Let me just talk about these ones but it's just similar to what I've also presented here when I was talking about these approaches, the quantitative and so on. But I will just go through that again in terms of the what do you do when you're now doing analyzing your data. If it's quantitative, then you're following the descriptive statistics. But descriptive statistics, they are not enough, especially at a level of master's PhD, for you to say you have done the method you are just your data you're just analyzing only using descriptive statistics only. No, you have to go on to inferential statistics. In fact, integrating all these descriptive statistics, inferential statistics, and using data visualizations as well. So for the descriptive part, you have to summarize and describe the data using measures such as means, medians, modes, frequencies, percentages, standard deviations. So in a way, that will assist in providing an overview of patterns, trends, and the distributions in the data set. You are just understanding your data or giving the characteristics of the data itself. But when you now do inferential statistics, that's where now you examine the relationships, differences, predictions, and so on, using those regression analysis, correlations, t-test, ANOVA, hypothesis testing, So in a way, that will allow you to draw conclusions about the population based on the sample that you are having. So that's why we call them inferential statistics. You are now drawing inferences. You are now making conclusions based on the data that you would have collected, given the sample as well. Then data visualizations, use of graphs, charts, tables, and that complement when you are actually presenting quantitative findings, to present them clearly, especially for quantitative, so that that in a way enhance the comprehension and highlights key results as well. For thematic, for qualitative, the thematic analysis, you are identifying, analyzing, and reporting recurrent patterns, themes, or categories that are in textual or visual data. So that is useful for interpreting participant perspectives and understanding the underlying meanings, right? Then the narrative analysis, you are examining stories, personal accounts, or experiences to explore how individuals construct meaning, right? So in a way, you want to understand context, motivations, and individual perspectives. So those live the realities of the participant. Then content analysis, they now use systematically code text or visual material to quantify the presence of certain themes or concepts. So there are studies that I've also done, I think, one or two papers that where I've used content analysis. But it's always important that also even integration of all these techniques, that they will lead to a more enhanced understanding and quality of the research that we'll be doing, as in, because we are already triangulating the already sort of integrating the research designs, in terms of the qualitative and quantitative elements. Then, so it's important that you just consider to also link, that there must be a link to the research questions as well. So the analysis that you have done, you must ensure that it's directly connected to the research question and objectives. You have to integrate with the literature as well. You compare the findings with previous studies. That's the sort of the where you have to do the triangulation with literature. So making sure that the findings, you have to compare them with previous studies to highlight similarities, differences, and also if there are any contributions that maybe possibly you are making, that also maybe others are making, or that they did not make. Then the issue of transparency and RICO as well, in terms of the quality of what you would have done. It's important that you clearly describe the analytical method that you would have followed, the coding strategies and statistical procedures, so that you ensure that there's credibility and replicability of the work that you would have done. Then I also talked about ethical consideration as well, anonymizing qualitative data, and reporting the results responsibly, avoiding any harm to the uh, to the participants. Then also, when you are doing data analysis, then that's where you can use softwares like SPSS, for example. Um, you know, we were doing a training of SPSS, a few, I think, in the previous 2 weeks or so. Then you can also use for qualitative analysis. We have Atlas TI. We also have the MAXQDA that you can also use. There's NVIVO as well, but the UJ doesn't have it. Only have Atlas TI. We also have resources for Atlas TI as well. You can request the resources if you need them. In terms of workshops that have been done, trainings that have been done, that was we're addressing specifically on Atlas TI and SP and SPSS. But there's also other tools for softwares for quantitative data analysis, like Stata. We have Aura. We have the e-views as well, that you can also use to run regressions, and also do descriptive analysis of your data. So you have to. So in a way, I think I've said on the issue of that you have to maintain transparency and reproducibility of the method. So one should be able to reproduce the results that you obtained, or be able to replicate the analysis in another setting, or in other conditions. So if your data analysis is done thoroughly, that will sort of provide evidence that is robust to answer your research questions, support the arguments that they are making, and also to situate your findings within the broader academic discourse. That is the triangulation that I've talking about. So you have to make sure that the analysis it equals to making a meaning. In a way it must lead to that. There must be meaning that is made, not just presenting numbers or quotes. Remember, numbers on their own, they are useless. Quotations on their own, they are useless as well. They have to be meaning that must be attached to that. Then so you can receive training on on SPSS and as well as on Stata, and we can share resources that we have that you can use when you are now faced or now within these stages of the writing process. Then, so this is just the typical social science structure that we normally follow. I've already spoke about that before. Introduction, literature review, methodology, the results of findings, the discussion chapter, the conclusion and recommendation chapter, then the references, then the appendices, where you put all those other elements, supplementary materials, including your interview guides, your questionnaire, and other, ethical clearance letters, similarity reports, and so on. So all those other elements. So you'll find them within the appendices. Anything that you could not put within the text, but that you want the reviewer to also have access and be able to include in the review process. Then I've already mentioned some of these are elements that you expect, like within the introduction, context, problem, research questions, objectives, and other elements that I've already mentioned that are not here. Literature review, what is known, theoretical framework or conceptual framework, methodology, approach, methods, justification, ethics, result of findings, what you discovered, discussion, you interpret findings, link to literature or triangulate with literature, then conclusions, recommendations. Now you are sort of that this is where I normally give a summary of the whole, what is it that has happened within the study. So I summarize, so I give a summary of each chapter, from chapter 1 to, including all the chapters that I've done, so that now I can now move on to the contributions, limitations. Then I can give my recommendations for future research, or then make my concluding remarks. Then the references, you have to follow we normally follow the UJ Harvard. So you have to follow the prescribed referencing style that you are supposed to follow, including in terms of the university faculty guidelines, and as well as your departmental guidelines. These are just some effective tips that you can also maybe take into consideration, that it's important that when you are writing your thesis, you must start the writing early. You have to begin drafting sections as you collect and analyze data, rather than just waiting until all the data is now final. Then you start writing. So this is not the process is not linear, right? The process, when I talk about that, I'm talking about this, this structure. It's not like you have to follow a linear sort of progression. So you can do. I remember when I was doing mine, I even collected the data, tried to do some preliminary analysis before I even started like writing. So I just wrote sort of the introductory chapter, but then I went to look at the research method. Then I went to collect the data and tried to analyze it, to just see that, okay, will I get the data? How am I going to analyze this? Am I going to get results that are meaningful? So I just tested that. So in other words, you can even write other sections whilst you haven't even written the literature review. So you don't have to wait to say, okay, I must collect the data, then that's when I'll start writing. So you must also use clear, concise, and formal language. You have to communicate ideas precisely without using unnecessary complexity or use of overly use of like maybe technical jargons and so on. So you have to maintain an academic tone suitable for scholarly work. So the use of technical terms, you have to only use them when essential and explain them for clarity, ensuring that the accessibility is for a broader academic audience. Then the use of signposting as well. It's important for you to guide readers through your thesis using clear transitions, headings, and summaries. So at the end, remember that linking that you have to do. So you have to link, all the sections must be linked, paragraphs, and so on. They must be having sort of a logical progression of the ideas, you know. Then it's so when you signpost, you help the readers to follow the structure and logic of the arguments that they are making. Then managing referencing effectively, very important as well. You have to use referencing management tools like EndNote that the library offers, for example. Then as well as consistent citation style throughout the thesis. So if you're using UJ Harvard, then use UJ Harvard. Don't use UJ Harvard. You sometimes use APA. You have to be consistent with the sort of the referencing style that you are following. It's important to also revise and proofread multiple times. I cannot overemphasize the importance of that. That when you are writing, talking from a writing consultant perspective, as a writing consultant, you must make sure that you you are the author, you are also the reader and the editor. You have to assume those three roles when you're writing. If it doesn't make sense for you, it won't make sense for the other person. So you must be reading rigorously each sentence that you write. Your vocabulary, words that you are using, are they appropriate? Does it make sense in the sentence? Is it not a continuous, sentence? Is it a broken sentence? You must read. Don't read over that. Read as a reader, not as the one who is writing, and also edit the work. So you do proofreading and editing, and also you can use others as well. To do that, your peers, so that when you that the content, you review it for clarity, for coherence, for grammar, for mistakes and other language violations, as well as formatting, right? Then, so it's important, like I've said, you can seek for feedback from peers or from your supervisor so that you can refine the final draft. So like we said, that this is it's a repetitive process. We have to continue repeating. It's also an iterative process where you have to continuously, updating as well your work in terms of statistics and other elements that requires updating before the final output is submitted. So writing, see it as as thinking, right? You don't have to wait until everything is perfect for you to start. So thinking, you always think, isn't it? You don't wait for you to just figure out everything, then you start. So see it as if you it's a process of just like thinking. Then also you have to, maybe you must have, there must be some habits that you have, some writing habits that you are having as a result, as a as a researcher, as a postgraduate student. So if time allows, maybe we can share some of those sort of your personal writing habits. Whether do you like writing in the morning? So I like the morning one, early hours. Sometimes I even sleep because I just can't write. The brains, they can't just function well. You can't put things together well. You can see that what I'm writing, maybe now it doesn't make sense. Then you can write. You can rest your mind. Then you can write early hours. I've had a lot of successes writing early hours, like maybe around 3 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I wake up with a clear mind, fresh mind. Then I can write my conclusion. I can now conclude the paper that I'm writing, something that I could not do maybe during the late hours of the day, right? So those are some writing habits that some of you have that you can maybe possibly share with us. Then look, some these are just some commonly encountered challenges, in writing. There's an issue of what we call a scope creep, where the research question or objectives, they keep expanding, making the study to be unmanageable, right? So you have to avoid that. Don't continue adding more. expanding the scope of your study, or adding more objectives to the study. So in other words, if you engage in that, that will lead to delays and possibly challenges in maintaining focus, right? Then procrastination, delaying writing. Procrastination is the thief of time. I've heard of such a quotation. So you don't have to procrastinate, because if you procrastinate, if you delay, that's where now you will now end up engaging in unethical academic practices now, like plagiarizing and so on. But just because you did not plan your writing well, so you don't have to delay writing, of or any other research tasks. So often, um, some they do it due to being overwhelmed or perfectionism. Some people are perfectionists. So you if you procrastinate, that will reduce the productivity and also increase stress when you have to meet deadlines, including these ill academic practices that I've been talking about that are not ethical. Like you end up plagiarizing. You just see a section in my work that relates to what you want to do, then you take the whole section, you make it yours. Right. So then we also have data analysis issues as well, where you can have problems such as incomplete or missing or inaccessible data that will hinder the analysis. So in some cases, you may require revising research methods and also adjusting the scope of the study as well. So the research method itself, the data collection tools, and so on, so that whether you have to be able to get the data that really answers the research questions that you are posing. Then we also have the what is called the writer's block, where you feel stuck. So it happens a lot. Even with myself, I used to also have that. But not to say, let me not say I felt like I was stuck, You never, you don't have to get stuck. But I use this approach where I think about something extensively before I write about it. So I can take maybe 1, 2 weeks just contemplating on writing, on a particular section, but I'm thinking about it. Then, but the time that I start writing, my pace is sort of I will have a faster pace because I've already put all the thought, process and everything into it. So there are some people who feel like that, but there are some who just get a sort of a block. They just get stuck and they are unsure of how to start or continue writing. So it's important to talk to your peers. It's also important for you to visit us here at the Research Capacity Development Unit as well, at the postgraduate school, for book a research writing consultation. Then we can also talk, just to talk, talk, brainstorm, come up with new ideas. We have helped a lot of students. I myself have helped quite a number of people who will be coming and saying, I just didn't know what to do, but now I'm living here with a rejuvenated perspective, and now I know what to go and do. But that comes from talking. Always have a pen and a paper. You must have a notebook. Ideas come in places where you don't really think that maybe you can get an idea. Sitting in a text, you can have an idea. You can be inspired. And by the time you're inspired, you must be able to put the idea down without thinking of whether does it make sense or not. You just write it down. And it's very important. So inspiration just comes from places that you might, even when you are watching a movie on Netflix, sometimes you get ideas when you are in church and the preacher is preaching. You get ideas when you are watching animations, maybe with your brother, with your sister, or with your child. Ideas come from such. You'll be surprised how much you learn when you watch animations. You know, so that is important. So in other words, the point I'm trying to strike or to deliver is that wherever you are inspired, then you must be able to write that down. So that's one way in which you can circumvent or try to go about this issue of writer's block. So usually when you have a writer's block, it normally results from fatigue. So that's why I say you can sleep, then you can start. Wake up early hours, when you are feeling good, then you will see that you make substantial progress. It can also result from lack of clarity or pressure to produce work that is perfect. Remember, some we research like we want to win a Nobel Nobel research prize. So at the end you feel that you are pressured for you to do something that is perfect. Even when it's perfect, you continue wanting to perfect it. So it's important for you to normalize struggles. Every researcher faces some of these struggles that I've been mentioning, including even myself as well. So, but what matters is how do you respond to that? Are you going to have a writer's block forever? a blackout. So it's important that you what matters is how you respond. And also it's important that you communicate with your supervisors. Also, for us, so some other support mechanisms that are there for you as well. We do have research writing consultation that I've talked about, and communicating with your peers as well. If you so that will ensure that you are able to progress well. So these are just some effective strategies that you can follow. For successful thesis writing, you have to create realistic timelines, seek supervisor feedback early and often, form a writing group for accountability, back up your work regularly as well. You don't want to that if you are now having multiple versions, it's very important for you even labeling them properly so that we know. Myself, I use V1, V2, V3 so that I know at the end, you end up revising a document that maybe was possibly an earlier version of your work. So you have to also keep those versions. Remember, even if the supervisor say remove this, don't take it. It doesn't mean that you must delete it for good. Just take it and place it somewhere. You might use it in your own work, or you might use it again within the same work that you are doing. I've seen cases where you are told by the supervisor that don't do this, then tomorrow they will tell you again that do the same thing that they say. They suggest that you must include what they said you must remove before. So always be removing does not mean deleting, it just mean putting it aside for later use. Then you must keep a research diary as well. Like I've said, you must record daily or weekly progress, challenges, and insights, and you use that to reflect on the workflow, maintain focus, and adjust the strategies as required. So remember, when you form writing groups for accountability, that's where you now collaborate with peers to share progress, exchange ideas, and motivate each other. You know so these are just some strategies that one can follow. And timelines must be realistic. You for you to do that, you can break your thesis into parts that are manageable, tasks that are also manageable, and you set clear milestones that maybe after 2 weeks I should have done this. Don't say I'm going to do the whole literature review in 1 week, yet you know that you cannot be able to do that. So you have to allocate sufficient time for research, writing, revisions, and also for proofreading and editing of your work, because you are the editor as well, including when you are sending the final output for editing as well. All that have to be taken into consideration. Then this is the checklist, that I've just tried to put of some of the important elements that you must check. Proofreading, reviewing the text for grammar, for spelling and punctuation errors, ensuring clarity, coherence, and logical flow of ideas. Then formatting and consistency as well, checking headings, subheadings, numbering for uniformity. Technical appearance of your work is very important. You have to ensure consistent font styles, sizes, and line spacing. Verify that tables, figures, and captions are correctly formatted, and also that you have referred to those within the text. Don't just dump a table, but you have to talk about it, and then also the you have to verify all the captions that you make, whether they correct and correctly formatted as well. You have to verify content as well. Content verification. It's important to confirm that all the research questions and objectives are fully addressed in the conclusion. Right? Then you have to go back to, like I've said, you go back to the introduction. It's realign the introduction with with the conclusion. Right? So in a way you have to reconcile the two. There must be an agreement. Then the references and citations, you have to ensure that all sources are cited, and then they also have a corresponding entry in the reference list according to the university style or guidelines, like the Harvard, UJ Harvard, for example. Then you have to verify that the reference list is complete and formatted correctly. You must come up with your own approach of verifying whether the references are all existing within your text, right? I have my own where I make use of an Excel. I put all the in-text citations on Excel, put on one column, then I put in another column all the references that are in the reference list. Then I go one by one checking. Are they there? If they are missing in text, then I have to delete them from the reference list. If they are in text but are missing in the reference list, then I have to add them to the reference list. So that is a process that you can do according to what works well for you and what's easier for you as well. Then you also have to adhere to the university thesis submission requirements. We have done workshops previously during this month and last month where we did the thesis submission procedures, faculty processes and submission procedures at the beginning of the year. We also have done the thesis writing and submission procedures as well, proposal writing and submission procedures. So there's quite a number of support workshops that we do that links to these topics that we are talking about. That relates to how do you submit your thesis, including how do you defend as well if you are a PhD candidate. Right. Then the inclusion of all mandatory sections as well, abstract acknowledgements, appendices, and so on. So it's very important that you that final polish of your work. It's very, very significant in terms of that the presentation. It really matters. The first impression lasts. Then so where you need to use a professional proofreader, a professional language editor, then you also have to do so. Then just my concluding remarks. So remember this whole process, the process of writing your thesis, is challenging but also rewarding. Right? It's challenging and it's also rewarding. And I think my colleague Lawrence has also mentioned that when he was opening this workshop. So it's challenging, but it is rewarding. It's a demanding process that requires dedication, persistence, and strong organizational skills. But the intellectual and personal growth that it brings, it's a very, very it's highly rewarding. Then critical thinking and analysis as well. Remember that is what the success that actually depends on that. It depends on your ability to think critically, to analyze data rigorously, and to synthesize complex ideas into coherent arguments. So that is very important. Then the impact in social sciences as well. The research that you are doing, it must be in a position to influence policy, improve professional practices, and deepen your understanding of human behavior, social structures, and cultural dynamics. Then it must also address societal challenges. So your work, it has to identify social inequalities, propose evidence-based solutions, and also inform decision-making at local, national, and global levels. Remember, the research must improve the lives of the people. It must remember when we talk about lives of people, we are including the animals, we include the environment as well, because we are the custodians of such. So if it doesn't result in an improvement in our lives, then it doesn't. It's research that do not really matter. Then there must also be an element of personal and professional growth as well. The thesis journey itself, it will develop transferable skills such as problem solving, communication, ethical reasoning, and resilience as well. Right. So that those are sort of traits or characteristics that are valuable for both your academic and professional careers. Right. Then the issue of contribution to knowledge as well. When you complete your thesis, you are adding to the body of academic knowledge, while they are also empowering yourself to make meaningful contributions to the society and to the field of study, which is the social sciences uh, community. So these are just some sources for further reference if you need to refer some books that are dedicated to writing, for social scientists, strategies for writing thesis by publication in social sciences and humanities, how to write a master's thesis and dissertation writing as well. Um, you know, some handbooks, that are also out there. And with this, I'm now handing over back to Lawrence so that we can just engage in an open discussion segment. Then we also move to the closing of this session. I thank you. Lawrence, are you there, or Ms. Pila? Are you there to lead us into the open discussion segment?
Yes, Dr. Gabriel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, now thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for such a very insightful presentation on thesis writing and social sciences. It was very insightful, and hopefully all the participants who are here definitely have taken some tips and on how to write their thesis. As we said in the beginning, that it takes a lot of time to actually compile a whole thesis, but it actually comes with its fruits at the end of the day when you have to do, the submission, and also when it has to come to do with also the graduation ceremony. I'm sure everybody always looks forward to that when they, begin their thesis, or when they begin their postgraduate journey. We always look at, you always picture yourself, in that beautiful gown, whether it's a master's gown, whether it's a PhD gown, but we always picture ourselves there. But obviously, this is the learning curve. This is the process that we have to go through, which is the thesis writing. And hopefully, we'll all be there soon, and we'll all complete our thesis, and we'll all be graduating very soon. So in that regard, thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel. I will now open the floor to questions. So if there is any questions from the participants, we've opened the floor. So what I have done, I've also enabled the mic. So I've allowed everybody's mics. So all you can do is just unmute from your from your side, and you can give your contribution if you do have any contribution, or maybe if you are working on your thesis and you want to share with us some of the challenges or whatever that you are facing, then you can, tell us it, and we can share your experiences. Then definitely Dr. Gabriel will be here to assist with those questions. You can also type in the chat box, and I will be able to present the question to Dr. Gabriel. Then, Dr. Gabriel, there is a question in the chat box from Fiona, which says, how many times can one upload your work on Turnitin?
Hi, Fiona. Thank you for the question. So that is dependent on the manner in which the assignment was set up. Right. So if you use the one of the university that postgraduate students can access on ULink, you can submit it multiple times. Right. So which means that when you submit it for the second time, then it will override in the repository the submission of the first submission. So that would be just progressing like that. But the problem happens if you go and submit it somewhere else and not on the same assignment where it was submitted before, right? So in a way, Turnitin works with the number of submissions that can be put before that is permanently in the stored in the repository of Turnitin and now be used to check against the similarity when for other submissions that will come after that submission. So the number of submissions. So if it's multiple submissions, meaning you can submit it multiple times, but you have to submit it on the same assignment, not to submit it on your profile. Then you go and submit it to someone on someone else's profile again. When it happens like that, then the next submission will be flagged as 100% similarity, right? So it depends on the assignment, whether it's multiple or not. And when it's multiple, you have to submit on the same assignment where you have submitted initially.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Dr. Gabriel.
Yeah, welcome, Fiona.
Okay, now perfect. Thank you, Fiona, for your question, and thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for answering the question extensively. Are there any further questions from the participants? You can also raise your hand and you can also put in your contributions as well. If you do have any further questions for Dr. Gabriel, you can do that. Okay, there's another question which says, how much time could it take for an article to get published after submission?
It's from Seflule. It's
Yes.
let me say that is dependent on the journal that you would have submitted to. So the journals, they have different timelines. Some can go even up to 2 years. I've had one paper that took 1 year, 9 months. I've read some papers that I even thought that they could be quicker, that take almost over 2 years. But some is just because of just being inefficient in the review process, and other process that lead to the publication. But some journals, it's actually their timelines. They tell you that, like for example, on one where my paper took 1 year, 9 months, it took almost for me to receive the review feedback. It took 9 months. Then they gave me 6 months to action on the feedback. Then it goes again to another round of review again. That took almost maybe 3-4 months again. Then they will accept the paper, allocate an issue where it's going to be published. It's a process that can even take maybe 3 months or so. So it just depends on the journal. It's so different journals have different timelines, of which those ones who are so quick to publish, then you must also, that's a red flag for predatory journals as well. So you must check the journals, whether is it a reputable journal. If it is reputable, you are sure that it is reputable. Then you are able to now check on the homepage of the journal. You can get information in terms of their publication timelines. So there are some that take maybe in 3 months they would have done the review. Usually, on average, for my papers, there's been something like almost maybe 6 months. That is just the average. It's 6 months. The review normally takes 3 months. Then maybe the process of review and so on, they have finished. Then maybe leading to publication, it will take roughly, maybe let me just say 6 months. That is on average, depend for those journals that are fast. But some they can take up to maybe 2 years. But you have to, it's a process, that something that you have to check, and also that you have to decide based on your priorities as well, in terms of how quick do you want that publication. But beware of predatory journals as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for clarifying further on that question. I see a thumbs up there from Sishule Moyo. That's perfect. Any further questions from the participants? I see a question from Subamiseni, which says, thank you for such an interesting presentation, also indicating the importance of updating the references as we finish our thesis, as especially for some of us who are writing about AI, which changes every 3 to 6 months. Yeah, so it's sort of like a comment from
Yes, yes. And I think
Subamiseni.
I've touched on that as well, where I said it's very important. It's not only even for you to, it's not only references, but even the content of your work itself, you have to continue updating it as well. Because remember, what you would have said 5 years ago, it's not the same thing, maybe possibly. It's not the same reality that is there today. Things change. So wherever you feel that something has changed, you have to update. Statistics change. Your problem statement might be based on something that you said 5 years ago, but we are not within the 5 years ago today. So you have to continuously update that, including literature itself, source, and the sources as well. As you update your work, also update the references as well, and also update the list as well, the reference list and so on. Otherwise, that is a process that we would have to do at the end, where you have to update all that. Let's take a hand from Koza, PM Koza.
Yes, you can unmute and speak, Koza.
Afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
I'm not sure.
Afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this workshop. It helps us a lot. I have a question for Dr. Gabriel.
Yes.
I just want to ask on an issue regarding the original contribution that a PhD, a doctoral study must make. I heard you saying that sometimes when you attend the graduation ceremonies, you just hear people reading their studies, and then you wonder if that is befitting of a doctoral study or it's a master's.
Yes.
So I just want to ask if must should it be clear what your original contribution would be as you anticipate the study? Like normally the procedure is that you should write that original contribution section. It should be contained in the proposal that you make for a doctoral study.
Yes.
So I just want to verify if that is the case in your if that is something that you found or if you experienced, because I found it conflicting. I find it to be predeterministic in a way, because you do not know what your data will be, what you're going to find in the when you do your field work. Yet you are supposed to make an original contribution to the field, and as well as the proposal that you submitted, which stated that this is what you think your doctoral study will the original contribution of your doctoral study will make. So I just want to verify that should it be clear from the outset of your study, the original contribution of your study, what is it going to be? I'm not sure if the question is clear, because I'm busy thinking on my feet.
Okay, no, I understand the question. Well, I'll just maybe clarify one or two things
Okay,
on that.
thank you.
Okay, look, the contribution, first of all, during the conceptualization of your study, that is the one of the central elements that you are looking at, right? So remember, the conceptualization of your study, it's a process of reading when you are trying to choose your topic, so all those elements that I've been talking about and saying the questions that I said you can ask yourself. So that is a process of reading. So through reading the literature, that's where you can identify a gap that exists in literature, right? So in a way, you already have some kind of an idea of the contribution that you are making. That's why you have to state the contribution, the possible contribution that you are going to make in your proposal, right? Because it comes from literature. The contribution, what is it that your research is going to sort of add to the what is the literature that is already existing within the field. And I think during the course of the presentation, I've talked about that others, they end up developing a framework that address maybe a manner in which something should be done, right? Others, they end up maybe coming up with a sort of adapting existing methods, right? Others, they end up introducing even new theories that might emanate maybe from the study that they would have done. So, but at the end, after you have finished, there should be a meaningful contribution that would have made. That must be explicitly stated within your work, right? At the end of when you are concluding, you include the contribution that you have made, right? So that contribution is the one that we also look at to be able to judge that, okay, because remember, the contribution is the one that distinguishes you as a PhD candidate from a master's candidate.
From a master's, yes.
Yes. So if your contribution is not meaningful, then it means that you have written just maybe possibly at a level that a master's is also writing, who are not required, who it's not mandatory for them to include a contribution, a meaningful contribution. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to contribute to literature. You contribute to theory, more specifically theoretical literature. I can give an example of my study that I did through reading. When I was doing my PhD, through reading, I found that within the negotiation process, right, trade negotiation process, when I look at this, the sort of the steps that were being followed. Okay, first, when I was looking at that, I saw that there's no sort of a generally so agreed process that is followed when you're doing negotiations. So that was my stepping stone. Then I went on to look at the process. If they have a process, what is it that is normally done? Then I saw that, okay, the analysis that is normally done, that informs those negotiations. It's normally done at a sort of at a macro level. Then I had to try to think of, okay, how can I introduce a micro level analysis? Then I developed, through using sort of other tools that were already there, I developed my own tool that I called a product level analytical method, where I was using that method to identify products and sectors that must be prioritized in trade negotiations. Right. Then I went on to test that tool. So I went on, read literature again. I found out that, there was a negotiations that happened between 2003 and 2007 between SACU and the United States of America, where they wanted to negotiate a free trade agreement, but it failed. Then, okay, I took advantage of that. I went on and argued that, okay, that has been a long time. It's over 10 years now. So both the political space and economic and other conditions have changed. So let's renew this discourse of sort of negotiating this agreement. Then I went on now to say, okay, I put a scenario where I was hypothesizing a free trade agreement between the United States and SAC, where I applied that method to identify products that SAC countries will prioritize and that US will prioritize, which are products that they can produce sustainably and that are having an import market that is continuously large or growing in the import market. And I do it either way. So look, I had a problem, I had a gap that I identified. I developed a tool to try to show that, okay, this is a gap. I'm saying there must be a product level analysis. Here's a tool that can do that. And I'm applying it to test that tool in the case of SAC and the USA in a hypothetical free trade agreement that I'm envisaging or envisioning that it can happen in future. then okay, that is the kind of contribution that I'm talking about.
Okay. No, thank you. So just a follow-up, Dr. Gabriel, quickly.
Yes.
So was that frame the product that you developed in the end? Was it stated in your research proposal, or it came later stage
No,
as you were reading?
I stated in the proposal, right? But remember, in the
Yes.
proposal, we are just trying to see whether does it work what you are saying, what could
Oh,
be the
okay.
contribution that you are going to make. But in the final, then that will be the final contribution that you would have made. So if you do not even have any contribution that you are making, then for a PhD, as a PhD candidate, the university cannot take you. Right. So you have to have some kind of contribution to say, okay, this is what I'm thinking that my study will contribute to existing data, but based on a gap that you have already identified. Because a gap, you can identify it. You have to identify the gap before you even do the literature review, because it's done during the conceptualization phase of your study. Then the literature, now when you do literature review, you identify that gap again in literature. So in other words, I'm saying you go in a process of reading, in a gap finding mission that you are doing in reading literature, right? Then after you find a gap, you find that, okay, this is a gap, you check whether if anyone really did this, you explore all the alternatives that you have. You search on Google Scholar, you go and search on EBSCO, you search on these databases until you are convinced that possibly, remember, you are not really sure that no one has ever done that.
Yes.
But you have a basis of arguing that I have exhausted the alternatives that I have. I've done what I could do, but I did not see any study that they have done this. Right? Don't say that there's no study that they've done that, because you don't know. But I've checked and I didn't see any study. Hence, you can now do that. So it's a process of conceptualization. Then you do your research. Then at the end, that's why I'm saying at the end, you go back and rewrite the introduction. Remember, the introduction chapter, it's based on the proposal, what you were writing in the proposal, isn't it? Yes. So you go back and now saying the contribution of this study is this, which is aligning with the contribution that you have stated at the end. Now speaking to the study that you have doing, because you have completed the study.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a mere reflection on my side. I I sort of confined myself to the research proposal, and I thought, like, if I could step up, because as you say correctly say that when you are reading, you find new information, and that information you start to see gaps here and there, even though those gaps you initially pointed them in the research proposal. Those gaps may not necessarily may add, or they may contrast the ones that you identified. So I confined myself to the research proposal, the original contribution section. So now I think with this information that you shared, it frees me to expand, and then really this should be, I think, I should outline which aspect I would like to take, the research gap that I would like the study to fill, as I go about doing the research. So I confined myself to the research proposal. So you clarified that. Thank you so much.
All right, yeah, welcome. Lawrence, I see another question from Sehlule that is saying, could there be an average number of references that one could cite in their thesis? I had 40 pages of references. So you are not really limited on that. So you cite as much as possible, but also remember the justification of the number of citations depends on the information that you have used, that you sort of borrowed from other authors. What is not yours, you must cite it. So that is important. So that does not really put a cap on the sort of to come up with an average number of sources. I had 40 pages, and it's not sort of an issue. But you remember there are sections where you extensively cite introduction, literature review mostly. Then it diminishes a bit when you go into the research method. So when you do introduction, literature review, if you are having a theoretical framework or conceptual framework as a chapter, then there you cite extensively. Then you go into the research method, then that reduces a bit. Then you go into the results. Now you are talking about yourself. Remember, it's now about you. What is it that you have found? What are you saying about that? What do you think about that? Then you go into the discussion chapter. Then you start citing again. But discussion, you are citing the same sources that you have cited before. So which means they already have a reference list. So there's no, let me just say, there's no average number. There's no average number. It just depends on the integration of your sources and whether you are fully acknowledging text that is not yours, or ideas that you have that you have been inspired from other sources.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel, for clarifying on that question there. I hope you answered there, Setlule Moyo, and your question is answered. And is there any further questions from the participants? Are there any further questions? Okay, Moyo says, thank you so much, Doc. You really helped. Okay, so we have
I see
another,
a hand from Synodia.
yeah, Sinoti. Sinoti, you can go ahead. You can unmute your mic and speak. Can you hear me? Okay, the hand went
Synodia, if
down.
you can hear us, yes, you can go on.
Unless maybe that was a hand that was raised by mistake. Okay. Okay, here we go again.
Okay.
Sinoti.
You can unmute yourself and ask your question. Sinot, alternatively, you can just type in the chat box.
Yeah, because we have allowed everybody's mic, so you should be able to make your contribution.
No,
Okay, there you
the
are.
question has
Okay.
been addressed.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Sinot.
Okay, in
Lawrence.
that, yes, Doc. So in that regard, there isn't any further questions from the chat. No further questions, no hands raised from the participants. I think we've also gone a bit overboard with about 18 minutes, but that's perfect as long as everybody's answered and all the questions have been addressed. So in that regard, it's just comments from the participants saying thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the presentation. Very informative, helpful presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much again, Dr. Gabriel, for such an insightful presentation. And thank you again to the participants for joining us again for this very insightful session on thesis writing and in the social sciences. So at the end of the day, it's about your research is about adding your voice and contributing meaningfully as well to your field. So, at the end of the day, if you are struggling, always try and seek help. Speak to the experts within your field. Seek guidance and feedback as well. Sometimes the feedback can be a bit, overwhelming, can, a bit negative, but, you just need to try and soldier on, and definitely we will be able to complete our thesis. It's a very difficult journey, but at the end of the day, we all embark on the journey, trying to complete our thesis. So in that regard, I would just like to now end the session. Thank you so much to all the participants who have joined us today, and thank you so much to you, Dr. Gabriel. for such an insightful presentation again. And just a reminder that I have posted a feedback survey into the chat session for the participants to fill in. Please kindly fill it in. We really appreciate your insights as well as to contribute to tell us maybe what other workshops do you want us to host here as at the research capacity development, as well as to provide some kind word to our facilitator for his hard work. In that regard, is there anything that you'd like to add, or is there any comments from anybody before we can end the session?
From my side, I'm fine, Lawrence. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Sinoti, I see your mic is on. Do you want to say something?
No.
Okay, not a problem. Perfect. Thank you so much again to all the participants. So in that regard, we'll now be ending the session. And thank you and enjoy the rest of your day further. Thank you so much. I'll now be ending the session. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.